Alright, Diablo players, so let's talk about it. Season 8, these are going to be my suggestions and feedback to Blizzard as a Diablo partner. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys what I'm going to tell Blizzard that we kind of want to see in the new updates from the PTR. So these ones though, just as a heads up, these are not all my personal decisions. Obviously, it's up to Blizzard to decide which ones go through, but these are decisions that I think that a lot of players that I've seen in the comments of my videos, as well as going over different forums, specifically Reddit, as well as the Blizzard forums, to go over kind of what people really want. So for starters, I feel like this is one of the biggest things here, is that all of the classes should be able to level up the glyphs to max. There's a lot of classes and builds that will not be able to max out their glyphs. They will hit kind of a wall and there's nothing that they can do about it. If you're playing a very specific build, there is no just get better drops. Certain skills, if you can't really scale into like the boss powers, your build simply will not be viable to even play. You guys are seeing one of the brand new builds for the next season, which are these exploding minions builds. It's kind of a cool idea, but all the gameplay, by the way, is going to be season 8 from the PTR because the new season isn't out yet, but hopefully we'll see some adjustments. But the main thing that I want to go over is that the classes need to be able to get their glyphs to max. Now, does every single build need to do pit 100? I would say that it'd be nice for all the builds to be able to at least do 65, and some builds may not even be able to hit that 65 breakpoint, and that is very important because if you don't hit that breakpoint, you're not going to be able to get your bonus on your glyph. So that's going to be a very big deal in Season 8 for a lot of builds. Heck, even some builds that are super beefed up, that we had the glyphs maxed out at 100, we have the boss powers, Paragon 300. It was still kind of a struggle even at like 65 for some like off meta stuff. Going into like 80 was very difficult for some builds, even with that max gear, with that like greater affix in every single slot because we had access to the PTR. So I think that the bare minimum is that every class should be able to do at least pit 100. That way you can get your glyphs up because again, and with relative ease, it doesn't require you to have glyph 100s to be able to do the 100, if that makes sense as well, because you need to level up all of your glyphs to get to that point. So you can't start out with a level 100 glyph and still not be able to like do it. This is another thing, is that balance is quite rough for Season 8 with some of the classes, specifically like on Druid lacking the ability to scale like an X damage with like the boss powers. Barb is in another game sense right now. However, specifically with like the Sorc, you can scale the burn, so the boss power works with that. With the Spiritborn, you can scale poison, and then it goes into like crit, but it's mainly like the poison modifier, so you can get a lot of damage with that. And with the Rogue, with close quarters, it has an uncapped multiplier, so you can kind of scale anything with that one, and it's just kind of good. With Necromancer, you have like the shadow damage over time with the corruption, with like the eye laser build. So if your class doesn't have a way to scale it, it kind of feels bad for a lot of the classes that are unable to successfully do it. The next thing I want to talk about is that ultimates in Season 7 were actually quite great. If any of you guys have played maybe the Bloodwave Necromancer or the Cataclysm Druid, or heck, even the Soul Rift, they're nerfing one of the runes that allows you to guarantee get the infinite overpowers. And overpower is almost a subject for another video completely, but I felt like ultimates finally felt really good in Season 7, right? Cataclysm Druid definitely going to be taking some mega nerfs. Bloodwave, I'm gonna be honest though guys, it's still a very powerful build. You can still do all the tormented bosses with it, but there's a lot of builds that are just so much worse in Season 8, and it feels bad to have a build that was really good and then it just gets nerfed really hard. I don't know if any of you guys remember like the Hoda Barb or like the Ball Lightning Sorceress. These were like very iconic Diablo things in Diablo 4, and then just got nerfed so hard that like no one wants to play them anymore. So I think they really need to tone down the nerfing of like the skills either so broken, OP, quadrillion, millions of damage, or it's like, oh man, you can't play that build, it's just so garbage. Make sure that you kind of tone it down a little bit on these nerfs, but specifically on the ultimates. No one really played ultimates in Diablo 4 for the most part, unless it was like Wrath of Berserker or like you get a multiplier with like, let's say Soul Rift, so it'd work with everything. But they finally felt kind of good, and you took that away because you made it so there is a cap of 200x damage. But I would say caps in general kind of make action RPGs feel a lot worse. In general, when someone wants to scale one specific thing, I would say just let them scale that one specific thing, whether it wants to be a dex stacker or an int stacker or certain ways to stack certain things. You put all of these caps on the glyphs, on the Paragon board, and on the key passives that really make it a little bit harder to play these kind of fantasy builds where everything you want is like in one category, so you can kind of build this kind of obscure thing. I think that that is kind of cool, that you're able to scale just one very specific thing in any action RPG. The next thing I want to talk about is specifically the mythics. Specifically the weapons are kind of bad, like the Spear of Lycander, Nesikem, Shattered Vow, heck, the Melted Heart of Selig. Like, these are like the mythic items. I think that they don't have the power that, you know, should exist with them because these are so rare. You cannot trade these. These only drop pretty much from the tormented bosses. I think that it's time to either make these tradable or do something else with them. I don't know if they could be, you know, salvaged into some new sort of like thing where it can grant something a greater affix, or do something with them. Specifically, there's just too many bad ones at the moment. Specifically, again, it's in that kind of like the weapon slots here. And then one thing that I think is really rough in Diablo compared to any other action RPG is the itemization in this game is still geared around you get a greater affix or the item is bad. So my suggestion would be to let the pet salvage all the non-ancestral gear or only drop greater affixes in world tier 4 or 5, which is something I'll talk about. So yeah, itemization, again, it's in the spot where like your whole goal, and I remember Colin specifically said this in one of the live streams, which was that we want to value your time. Well, you've made leveling harder, and to be honest, the leveling isn't really that bad. For anyone that's like, you know, a player that's played Diablo every single season, you can get, you know, you can do like a pit 100. Most of the time, it's not going to really be that big of a deal for most of like the blasters. It'll take them maybe another hour or two, but does that really matter? I would say the main problem that I see with this is that if you want to value the player's time, the entire journey from level 1 all the way up until World Tier 4. You have to get to World Tier 4 pretty much, right? Because you want to get the highest chance of getting, you know, GAs, right? Is that like all the items that drop in general in Diablo, right? You have to get them to drop GA. Any item that is not a greater affix up until that point is worthless. So one of the suggestions that I think is kind of cool is that maybe you cannot get the, you know, GA in terms of it being like a item that you can use at the very end, but at least you can get an aspect to roll perfect, and that way you're still kind of getting some progression as you're playing the either campaign or you're just doing the open world content up until you get to, again, you know, Tormented. You really don't get any GA gear, so all of the gear that drops is basically useless. Like, it doesn't feel like, oh man, I'm so excited I got this drop. Whereas I can play a game like Path of Exile, I'm like, oh man, a Divine Orb drop or Exalted Orb drop, cool, like, it feels good. Everything that you get is just like, it doesn't matter till we get to the end game. That's why people don't really like the idea of making the leveling experience longer. It's because, again, everything that you get is kind of worthless. This one over here is that all of the powers are at the end of the game. I should say all of the good powers. This would be like better here to say all of the good powers are at the end of the game for season. So all the good season powers are at the end of the game. So if you've played it, you know that like the world bosses kind of drop some good stuff, but all of the good ones are basically at like the torment area where you have to defeat the tormented boss. And I think it is cool that you're able to defeat the tormented boss and absorb its power. Very cool idea, kind of like Mega Man or any other game that has like the idea of taking the boss's powers. Cool stuff. However, the powers, you don't really get to engage with any of them because they're so weak so early on with the non like boss ones to get like the Endariel's, you know, flaming thing, or if you want to get like the Lilith's blood, with all those things that are really great for leveling and they're fun, they drop so far at the end of the game that a lot of players that also may not want to play the game because they feel like it's a slog through leveling, they're not even going to reach that point to get to the fun stuff, because I would say all of the boss powers are pretty much at the end. Whereas in Season 7, you can get the little poison AoE ring, or you can get the little fire bats or the little toad. Like, all of these things feel really good, and you're like instantly in there. Within like an hour of gameplay, even a player that's not like a blaster, they can have fun with these little powers. But in Season 8, the powers are just so weak earlier on, the ones that you have access to, unless it's a world boss. Again, the world boss ones are kind of in their own category, but that's not something where you could just be like, oh, I'm gonna go get the world boss power. It's like, well, is it there? Which world boss is it? So I would say either put the world bosses on like a faster rotation, or allow us to somehow get some of the other powers in maybe alternate ways. Maybe it could be a random drop in the area, but overall it just felt much worse than Season 7 in terms of like, cool, I get to like do these new things as I'm progressing in the game. I get like these new powers to level up. The next thing I want to talk about is specifically on Masterworking. As far as tempering goes, I think that we could just have some easier ways to reset tempers, or we can keep our previous tempers, but specifically Masterworking, as this is a very big thing when you go to like the end game, when you're trying to get get like those triple masterworking, I feel like it's not that fun to do because there's no skill in it. There's nothing that I can really do to control my experience with it. So my suggestion for the masterworking would be that let us have checkpoints at 4 and 8 so it doesn't reset to 0 when we reset the masterworking. So 4 and 8 are checkpoints. So if something is 12 out of 12, I can reset it and it goes to 8 out of 12. So I just remove the last one that it was applied. Hopefully that kind of makes some sense. That way we can kind of guarantee what we want. Now it still can fail, but it doesn't feel as bad because going from getting the first 2 masterworkings, it's annoying, but it's doable. But then the third one is so rough. If you miss it, then you have to level up all over again, and it's just kind of a pain to farm the Abdicite again and again, and you're just failing. It just feels like you're pulling on a slot machine, and it just doesn't feel like it's engaging because at the end of the day, there's no skill to it. It's just random. But the next thing I want to talk about is less focusing on the pit being the only form of like end game content. I think alternate ways to level up glyphs would be a great solution. As Abdicite, we have kind of some other ways to gain Abdicite, right? We have the tributes. Maybe you could add another tribute for glyph leveling. That would be cool. But overall, there are so many useless tributes. That's almost a subject for another video. But honestly, most of the tributes feel like they're not really utilized. Or even if you look at the brand new like end game with the citadels, there's not people that are constantly doing those. Those are kind of like a one and done thing. And mostly with tributes, people do the Abdicite, they do the mythic one, the rest, and people don't care about them, right? It's just kind of junk items. So I think that we could focus in on other forms of end game content other than the pit being kind of like the only thing that we can do, since it's kind of something that we've been doing for too long, I feel. This is at the tormented bosses. So when you're defeating the tormented bosses, there's like a timer that can go up. And what happens is there's like a timer that you cannot put in your materials and keep on doing like, your runs. Also, you can't do rota anymore. This is something that it's kind of up in the air, I would say it's better just to let people do rota runs versus everyone needing to put in the material. But as far as it goes, at the very end when you kill the tormented boss, there's like a brief timer where you can't really do anything. And you have to wait for the other Belial to maybe spawn in. I don't really like that. I think that downtime is too long when you consider people need to do hundreds of runs to make the mythics, maybe drop. I think that in general, I'm not a fan of farming the mythics, I'll be honest. But I think that they can ease up on maybe the mythic drop rate, or if you've already acquired a mythic, maybe you can have some sort of easier way to get a mythic as you progress if you've already gotten it. Because again, I am really overdoing like 200 runs of the same boss again and again and again. The first time you fight like some of these bosses when you're learning the mechanics in Season 8, because they are harder, I would say that's kind of fun and enjoyable. But after you do it 100 times, do you really want to do it another 100, 200, 300, 400 times when you need Air Perdition, you need Shroud of False Death, you also need Ring of the Starless Skies, especially because I look at Diablo as more of like a casual entry action RPG, and I think that the mythics in general maybe could be looked at as well in terms of like ways to acquire them if you've already acquired them before. Anyways, another thing that, as far as like the mythics go, is at like the tormented bosses, just to add a blacksmith that's like not too far away, and he can salvage the gear, so that way we don't have to teleport to town. And then one guy's like, hey guys, I'm full, I gotta go back to town. And everyone's like, oh man, we gotta wait on this guy. Hold on, wait, I'm almost done, guys. Don't start it yet. It's just like, put the blacksmith there, and I think that would alleviate a lot of the pain points. The next thing is that a lot of the uniques are just very weak in the game. The Trap Rogue one, the Ice Shard Sorc. I think the Ice Shard one is very fun. However, it does do World Tier 4. But like if you're comparing it to like any of the other top tier builds, the difference between like being able to do a Pit 75 versus a Pit 100 in terms of power, it's like night and day difference. But I want to say that when they're showing it off on the PTR, I think that they should at least make sure that they can just like make a mock-up build really quick, right? And then what they could do is make sure that it is capable of being close to the top. I'm not saying every new unique needs to be the ultimate broken build in every single season, but what I'm saying is that like these new uniques need to be somewhat viable, because there's so many times where like they release a new unique and either doesn't work, and I get it, it's BTR, this is kind of like the environment where we test these things, but if it's like a damage number thing where like you could just crank up the number in terms of like making something better, I would say that we want these new uniques to be near the top, okay? Ideally, if it was my personal decision, I would always make the brand new thing pretty much one of the best things, because it's really disappointing to hear we get a new unique. Oh, the Ring of Mendelin, right? This is a reoccurring thing that like, oh, Ring of Mendelin, guys, and then people play it and it's like, oh, it's bad. Hold on, guys, we buffed it. Oh, it's still bad. Hold on, we'll buff it again. And then finally it becomes good. Sometimes when you release something and it is not good and it's just constantly not performing well, like several times, people just kind of give up on either the build or they kind of give up on the game. So I would say having it come out very strong will make people very excited. But then also the next thing that I want to mention is like, it kind of goes into the nerfs that I was mentioning before. Don't nerf the things too hard once they're like really cool. But this is actually one of the more important ones over here, is that a lot of players are really vocal about this, and I've been reading your guys' comments and checking other forums and stuff. A lot of people are saying, I'm skipping Season 8. I've seen a lot of people say, I'm quitting. I don't want to play the game that's too hard if they've already done T4, right? So that, let's say in Season 7, they've already done Tormented 4 content, right? They are one-shotting everything, playing the Cataclysm, the Bloodwave. They're just deleting everything. It feels good, right? And I would say Season 7 honestly felt pretty good. But instead of making Torment 4, which is the same thing we've been doing, instead of making this like the thing that we've already done just harder for the same rewards, it doesn't really make sense. I think what would have made more sense is they had like World Tier 5 or Tormented 5, and this is the brand new area. This is the area that is really hard, that makes people think, wow, I don't know, I'm going to need a really good build to get this up and running, because this is the new World Tier, Tormented, whatever you want to call it. But it would be really nice to have certain things that would drop only in here, like the brand new gems, right? This was actually something that kind of got data mined a while back, that there was supposed to be a World Tier 5, and there are gems that could go up another tier. And maybe they only drop in this tier, or all the items in World Tier 5 or Tormented 5 are all GA. You have to give a reason for people to actually want that challenge. If the new challenge is, well, you just killed a monster, it's the same thing that you've been doing. Like, there's no difference between a pit 1 and a pit 100 versus just a number crank. With here, at least we can guarantee all of the items won't be bad. I mean, you can give us less loot, but all of it needs to be GA. I'm totally fine with giving us less loot, because this was a kind of a complaint I also saw, which would kind of be solved by this. But a lot of people were saying, I don't want to play a game where I'm getting less loot for it being more challenging, right? Because why would you want to do something harder and get less rewards? Because it's like a double negative, right? So I would say less loot is totally fine, but more quality loot would be kind of the trade-off, and I think people would respect that. So those are like the main things that I want to see specifically in Season 8. Now, I also wanted to give Blizzard some time to cook up some stuff for Season like 9, 10, whatever, whenever these would come out. So I think that these are things that I would like to see in the future for the game. I would like to see an official in-game leaderboard for the pit. I don't want to go to some other website and then check it, and then someone's like, no, there's another Chinese website, or there's another website over here, this guy did this on Bilibili. Just have it in the game. You already have like the Gauntlet leaderboard. I kind of get why they don't want to do this, I'm gonna be honest. They don't want people to see that one build is doing pit 100 and then like other builds stop at like pit 60 and then they're like, what the heck, I can't do anything. So I kind of get the idea behind that, but at this point, I would say that it will really help players understand what builds are maybe better to actually run, so then they don't feel like they hit a wall and then they can't, like, you know, progress. This will allow players to see, oh, okay, well, you know, I cannot play a Frozen Orb build this season. It's all about the Ice Shards, right? That's the cool build. Okay, I kind of want to build it. Look how much stronger it is. I think that would help out retention rate versus making people leave. Also, a trade house in-game would be great. Some good ways to implement this is because a lot of these third-party websites, they don't even want gold in game anymore, and like you get so much gold to the point where like the items get inflated, the duping gets pretty bad, and I think that might be why they don't want a trade house in game, because they don't want people duping mats and then kind of breaking the economy in the game. But I think that overall, it's been a really long time. A trade house in-game system would be fantastic if they could implement it. I've been always talking about PvP, and I feel like this is something where there needs to be a reason to do PvP. It can't just be do PvP to play PvP. It'd be cool if they had some sort of cosmetic rewards, or I feel like, you know, the best PvP clan can get like some awesome cosmetic, or their clan flag can be posted in some sort of town because they are the best clan or something. Another cool idea would be that the #1 ranked clan gets to design the brand new Mythic unique in Season 9 or something. There has to be a reason to do PvP. Clan battles would be an excellent way to implement it. You can have have ranked PvP in it. You could do 2v2s, 3v3s, clan battles. Maybe you can do wagers. You can put up items. You can put up gold. Some sort of reason for people to engage in PvP, because the PvP area originally had a lot of goblins. I think that was their original intent, was like, this area, it's got a bunch of goblins. Go here and you can fight over the goblins. But now it's like, well, what am I fighting over in PvP? Like, it does have okay density, but overall, you're not getting the brand new seasonal mechanic. Heck, it'd be interesting to see if they put the whole seasonal mechanic in the PvP area. So it's just going to be crazy. But I know at some point, though, what's going to happen is some people get too strong, and then they're going to bully the people and kill them over and over again. One suggestion with this, because in Season 0, PvP was lit. I loved PvP in Season 0 because there were so many people that would always go there. But a lot of times, once you would eliminate people again and again and again, they would just kind of be upset and they wouldn't want to engage. So they're like, okay, this guy killed me 3 times, I'm leaving, right? Because I would sit there and I would kill the entire lobby, and it was great. But I think that when you die in PvP, it could say, do you want to switch zones? So that way you can kind of cycle through players, because again, when one person's dominating, I mean, 9 times out of 10, if you go in, and you lose to them, you're probably going to lose to them again. It's not like it's going to magically change, but sometimes people want, it doesn't matter if they lost 10 times. If they beat that one player one time, they're satisfied. So, maybe you can let the person decide if they want a new lobby or stay in the old lobby, if they, die and they go back to town or something like that. So I think that'd be good. I've also mentioned this, but I really feel like clans. I already mentioned clan battles, but I think there needs to be a bigger reason to join a clan. We have so many like MMOs, and this is supposed to be kind of like an almost big open world MMO-like game, and I really want them to do something with clans, because there really isn't a point of a clan at the moment other than like a chat box, right? I also felt like a loot filter would be good. I saw this suggestion over on, I believe, Reddit, where someone was saying to have a pet salvage all the non-GA items, kind of like in Diablo 3, I believe we have a kind of a similar thing, just to pick up all the materials, and then we can just have it salvage all non-GA items. This would be a great thing. Or you could just make, all the items just BGA, that would work too. And then also, this is another thing that I think would be great for Diablo in the future. Instead of like, most of the time what happens is we get like one new unique, and then we get like a new aspect for each class. I think the better direction would be to make 6 brand new uniques that all the classes can use, or multiple classes can use. So like, you could just have something that's like specifically for damage over time, because like, for example, if we go look at the Blade of Zir, it's a brand new unique for Necromancer, it sucks. So I look at the things for the Necromancer, I'm like, okay, we got a brand new like boss sword, the Blade of Zir, sounds awesome, and I go use it, and I'm like, okay, it sucks, so I get no new build. So if there's other classes that can use it, maybe there could be a certain thing that someone figures out. I think making generic uniques is much better than one class unique, because a lot of times these uniques just kind of miss the mark. And unfortunately, if it misses the mark with one character, at least maybe with multiple classes that are able to use it, would be kind of cool. And then lastly, I want to mention new endgame content. And this is specifically something that pushes the action RPG genre, especially like Diablo 4. And it has to be something that's innovative, that's not like recycled content. And I wanted to mention to the Diablo team to not focus too much on reworking the game. They constantly do this with like, okay, the new item power, this is the new item power. We're going to scale all these numbers. We're going to make world tier 4. We're scaling like these numbers. I don't think you guys really need to do that, because again, it's just going to kind of feel the same at the end of the day with the people that make the good builds and the blasters. We're going to end up probably one-shotting the things anyways. So instead, I think that making new forms of content, and it needs to be innovative and not recycled content. So it can't just be, there's a new zone, all right, there's these other monsters that spawn that are recolored, and I don't know, they do something different. I want to say that what Diablo 4 would really benefit from is to engage the brain. And what I mean by that is that the powers from last season, they would have like these little tags, right? Whether it be that it would help out a core or like whatever skill. Not so much into that, but I like the vampire thing where you have like your gear tied to like these different like little symbols, and you can only socket in so many. I like the idea of trying to make the player think about what they want to go ahead and actually do for their build, versus just go here, kill monsters, you got new powers. And the new power system kind of feels too samey to potentially previous things, because when you look at the boss powers, it's kind of just like you socket in something and you get a 10x whatever. But the main boss power, that's cool. I like that. That's a great thing because it kind of engages your brain to think. However, there are other multipliers like Cinerats or other ones that just give you your overpowers deal X damage, your minions deal X damage. Those are the ones where I feel like it's not as exciting. So making the player think about how they want to actually push their power and make them have to decide, is it a grimoire, does it have like these tags? That was kind of cool in season 7, but I didn't really feel that way too much with season 8. It was kind of like, this is boss power, this is the number that makes this number go up, we want to funnel all into the boss power. And I'm actually okay with the boss powers being like the main source of damage, but I have also seen it, some people say that like your build doesn't matter because the boss power completely is what your character is based around, and I totally get that. But I would say if the boss powers feel too weak, though, because this is the other side of the coin, is that if you make the boss powers feel too weak, then people will simply not be able to push in the pit, because again, the pit is scaled so dang high. So they need to think about also maybe scaling the pit down, but it's specifically that you need to be able to make sure that the powers feel strong enough so the player gets excited about playing this season, but maybe too much power could be in the negative direction because they feel like their character, like their build doesn't matter. It's all funneling into the boss powers. But so a good balance of that would be good. But like I said, it was up to me. I just let the boss powers take control of the season. That way it doesn't really matter too much what your class is playing, and you would then just scale the multipliers. So again, double-edged sword kind of on that one. Anyways, let me know your guys' thoughts on that, and if I need to update this, we can update it in the future. But this is what I plan to send to Blizzard for like feedback for Diablo partners, so you guys can know kind of what's to come. Anyway, subscribe if you're new and you guys want an update, and we'll see you what they actually take into consideration for this. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.